I guess you have to play a practical joke. You don't tell a practical joke.
Yeah, well, you were gonna play a practical joke on the listeners to this show on RDU. See, because we take the music break, right? We take the music break twice during the show, but we don't know what the music is. Because we just send the show to them, and then they put it together and they put the music in. We don't know what the music is, but now people who listen to the show and they're in their car or whatnot, radio is a medium where people tune in 10, 15 minutes at a time, then they tune out. They don't listen to the whole show, really. That's not the medium. That's not the way it works. So as we get into the next break, what we can say is that we are going to go to a music break, and we won't know what the music is, but when we come out of the break, we'll talk about the music as if we did know what it was, and that the people who just tuned in during the music break will hear our commentary and be freaked out.
That's a practical joke. That's a bad one.
All right, let's skip it. That's not worth it. I thought of it. Yeah, it's not a good idea, really. How about those folks over at the Joint?
The Joint. Yeah, well, I listen to them, so they've got good music.
Yeah, they got really good music.
They have to mix a new song. Remember they did our hit song, the Keiser Chiefs, Keiser Chiefs.
Yeah.
And they talked about, it was way before its time. Remember, that was a song that was created the end of 2005, the last few months of 2005. And it talked about Revco and the coming collapse of the derivatives bubble.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Now, where are those guys now? They haven't put a new master mix out there.
We need a new mix.
A new mashup.
We have to talk to the Herb Whisperer.
Oh, yeah, the Herb Whisperer over there at the Joint, which is another very popular musical station here in New Zealand.
Honey, it's on RDU.
Very popular show here on RDU. The Joint. The Joint.
Oh, please.
What?
Have you gone crazy? So, New Zealand, okay? They're so well positioned, and you see that you see that in all these headlines emerging. You see it slowly. It seems slow while it's going on, but the history books, it'll look like a really fast movement.
Mm-hmm.
The dumping of the U.S., whether it's by HSBC Bank, one of the biggest banks in the world, ditching U.S. consumers. I mean, they're blatantly, openly, aggressively moving out of the U.S. market and saying so. They're saying they don't want any exposure to the U.S. toxic consumer. You've got India buying the 200 tons of gold, as we reported last week. You've got Japan. Obama's was in Japan this past weekend, and he's having to go there and beg, please don't dump the U.S. military apparatus and keep financing it.
Oh yeah, in Okinawa.
Everybody's dissing on the U.S.
Yeah, let's review the Okinawa situation. Japan buys scads of U.S. Treasury debt to keep the U.S. economy afloat. At the same time, they want the U.S. to pull out of Okinawa. They've got a huge military bases there. All they need to do is stop buying U.S. Treasury bonds, and the U.S. couldn't afford to keep their bases in Okinawa.
Exactly. Well, the Okinawans themselves are apparently a pretty, independent sort of group. They were semi-independent until the 19th century.
Mm-hmm.
So they think they've been given the wrong deal, because basically all those U.S. military bases, and there are several of them in Japan, 75% of it is in Okinawa. And they take up 10% of the landmass of Okinawa as a U.S. military base, like a whole variety of them.
Mm-hmm.
And 20% of the island is off limits to any civilians. It just seems like so imperial. It seems like something the Romans would do. They just said, here, we're putting a military base in the middle of Syria, and nobody can come near, or you're going to get shot.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the post-World War II world order, and it's now being challenged, isn't it? Because you've got these countries that, like China and Iran and Russia and others, that are breaking away from the U.S. dollar hegemony.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is like the two most important ones, I would say, from the last week are Japan and India, because those are typically very close. They do the bidding of the U.S. usually. So Japan becoming a bit ornery, as you would say. They're a little bit, they're standing up. The new prime minister won election, breaking up the monopoly of the conservative party before them. I'm not sure what their name, the Liberal Dems or something. Mm-hmm. That they broke up their 50-year monopoly on power by saying anti-American stuff, basically. Mm-hmm. And then, as our last episode of On the Edge with James Turk, as he was saying, this purchase by India is pretty remarkable, because this is not something the U.S. Treasury would be happy with.
Yeah, that anti-U.S. rhetoric. Remember Helmut Kohl in Germany used it to get reelected.
Helmut Kohl? Do you mean Schroeder? Gerhard Schroeder?
Is that what I meant?
Yeah, the one during the Iraq War, because the Germans were against it.
Right. Okay. And so now you're saying it was used in Japan to get folks to rise up and go for a change. But in order for the Japanese government to really divorce itself from imperial America, they really have to get rid of U.S. Treasury bonds. So since they depend on this symbiotic relationship of keeping the Japanese export market flowing by effectively lending Americans the money to buy Japanese goods, they have to decide really for real, how do they want to go forward in the 21st century? I mean, right now they're a vassal state of America, and there's a few in the country that benefit wildly from that arrangement. Are they really going to stand up and declare their independence from the American dollar hegemony? Okay, do it, man. Stop talking about it and get real. It's all talk. I've been hearing this for 10, 20 years. All these countries saying, we don't want Yankee no more. But when it comes down to it, they all basically kowtow to the U.S. and accept the U.S. Treasury paper and the U.S. dollar reserve currency, and they enjoy the perks that come with it, the elites do, and they're not willing to break free, and the average person out there is too busy, slave waging their way through the day to notice anything that they need to get done.
I think it's probably been quite good to be a country like New Zealand, where you're kind of like out in the middle of nowhere. You could be quiet and ignored, by the imperial power.
Well, we saw that show, didn't we? That New Zealand was the last place on Earth that mammals found.
I'm sure, however, they have to have some sort of U.S. military base. I have to look this up, because I'm sure the U.S. military does have a base pretty